Okay, welcome everyone. As we welcome in Menachem Yamansky, Irving Fishbaum, Yitz Fuchs, Baruch Ian. It's good to have Shalom Fogel back. Elliot Udell, Nachman, Barish. How you feeling, Barish?
I'm feeling better, thank you.
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Dr. Guy, Ben Cian Cohen, Reuven Pollack, Elia Yaffe, and Shimon Klein, Marshall Castle, and Yitzi Muller, Moshe Lehman, Richard Rosenzweig, Naftali Javelin, Rabbi Kran, Shelley Zeitlin, Dr. Reuven Guy, and we have here in Shul, Baruch Hashem, Reb Blumenfeld, Gedalia Engel, Reb Kramer is back, Richard Leonard, we have Reb Avram, Reuven Shanet, and Saba. We are holding, as we are sponsored by A.B. Spry for the safety of our soldiers, and for special for Isazef Ben Yuta, by Shimon Klein, Le'ili Nishmas, Asher Ansher Ben Yehuda, Gitta Bashim Pinchas for Irving Fishbaum for his Gesund, Issa Ben Rezel, Avigdoraya Ben Rivka. We also want to learn for Reb Smuluwitz's wife, Yocheved Nechama Bas Yenta, and our Chaver Adaf Reb Elia Yaffe's wife, Nechama Sarah Bas Miriam. They should have a Refuah Shalem and B'sei Sheikh Ali Yisrael. We are holding two lines from the top of Samach Amud Aleph, two lines from the top of Samach Amud Aleph. Sholach biyad pikeach, in the event that Marshall, who had a time to rest, to be up to his tricks, if Marshall sends a fire in Beresh's hands, so then Beresh is responsible. Beresh is a capable human being, and therefore Marshall is off the hook. And now Beresh is responsible. So Shalch biyad pikeach, hapikeach chayiv. Now, the Mishnah says, if then somebody came, if one person brought the wood and one person brought the fire, and then Reuven blew the flame, so then Reuven would be chayiv. So there seem to have been two girsas. There was a girsa liba and a girsa niba with a nun. The Gemara says they both work. Amar Abnaz, we welcome in Sandy Grunfeld, and we welcome in Neighbor Arbach. They both work. Amar Nachma Yitzchak Mandatani Liba loy mishtabish. The one who has the version Liba is not in error. Mandatani Niba loy mishtabish. Mandatani Liba loy mishtabish, like we have in this week's parasha. Nichsiv balabas eish, in a flame of fire. The Malach appeared as in a flame of fire. Omandatani Niba loy mishtabish. Dichsiv borei niv svosayim. He creates the movements of the lip. So, of course, when Reuven blows, he's moving his lips. Lipsa ruach kulan peturin. If the wind blows, then they're all potter. So, we learned that, like according to the Pshat and Taisvis, that it means that if it was a ruach she'ena mitzuya, then they're all potter, because they couldn't have assumed, they couldn't have expected that there would be 100-mile wind. Tan Rabbanan, liba v'lipsa haruach. Now here again, Marshall, who was well rested and up to his, normal behavior, if he blows the fire and the wind blows it as well. So the question is, can we, make Marshall responsible? So the Gemara says, Im yesh bili buyav kidei lilabaisa. If Marshall has enough hot air that it would have been enough to fan the flame without the air chayiv. V'imla, but if not, potter, which is actually amazing. Why should he be off the hook? If he understood that there's going to be a wind and that together with his wind it's going to cause damage, why, for whatever reason, should be off the hook? And that's what the Gemara asks over here. The Gemara says, why is it different? Amai lahave kizayra v'ruach misayasai. If, let's say, there he is, Marshall, the one to the left, is much more handsome. Says, as we welcome in Jay Siegel, I'm sorry everybody can't see Marshall buffooning around. The people on TorahAnytime.com don't know what they're missing.
They're lost.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they're green with envy. They're going to come on to zoomdaf.com just to meet Marshall in person. He signs autographs if you come to Chicago, and maybe even a free oil change if you're nice. He says...
Only for bourbon.
Only for bourbon. Okay. Anyway, so the Gemara says, why if Marshall blows together with the wind and it wouldn't be able to cause the fire to get there without the wind, why is Marshall off the hook? We know that you could be over an Isser Shabbos using the wind, with the assistance of the wind. V'amai lahave kizoyra v'ruach misayasai. It should be like the Av Malacha of winnowing, where you throw up the wheat and the wind blows away the chaff, and then the wheat comes down, right? So that's the Isser of Zaira, which is with the assistance of the wind, and Marshall would be chayiv a chatas if he did it forgetting that it was also forgetting that it's Shabbos. Amar Abaye, so Abaye says, no. Here, the wind is blowing one way and Marshall is blowing the other way. So the idea is, Amar Abaye, hachabama yaskinu kigain shaliba mitzad echad, v'lipsa ruach mitzad achar. He's blowing in one direction and the wind is blowing in another direction. So obviously, in such a situation, it's only going to be chayiv if it would have reached it with his effort. If not, it's the wind is not assisting over there. So obviously, he's not going to be chayiv. Rava says, Kigain shaliba beruach mitzuya. What happened was he blew with a normal wind, and the fire reached there. So what it means is if his effort would have taken it with a normal wind, then he's chayiv. If his effort only took it with a wind that was extraordinary, then he's not chayiv because he couldn't have assumed and expected that such a wind would come. Reb Zera says, when do we say that Marshall is chayiv when the wind assists him, if it's a ruach mitzuya? But that's only if he blows. If he's just breathing to get the heat, it's a very cold day, so he's breathing next to the fire to get warm or to get his hands warm, so that's not considered blowing, and then he wouldn't be chayiv. Reb Zera Amar Kigain de Tzimra Tzimure, where he just blew in order to warm himself, so then he's not chayiv. Rav Ashi says your whole comparison is no good. You see, over here where Marshall blows, if it wouldn't get there without the wind, and it only got there with the wind, what Marshall did was only a grama. In the case of Shabbos is an Isser of Meleches Machsheves. That means, in Shabbos is an Isser to do a creative activity like in the Mishkan. And the way they winnowed in the Mishkan was by throwing it up with the ear's assistance. So since on Shabbos we commemorate that Hashem created, any meleches machshavas, any action of planned creativity is chayiv. So of course there you're chayiv because when you did it in the way that they did it in the Mishkan. Here, however, if Marsh blew and it went with the wind, that's only causative, that's only a grama, and that's why he's pater. Let's see that inside. Rav Ashi Amar, Ki Amrinon Zayra Beruach Misayasai. Where do we say winnowing with the assistance of the wind is chayiv? Haniminin in Shabbos, that's only by Shabbos. The Meleches Machsheves Asra Torah, because the Torah said that anything that's a planned, creative activity is asr. Aval hacha grama ba'almahu, here it's causative, the grama b'nizakin pater, and grama b'nizakin's pater. It makes no difference if on Shabbos it's causative. It doesn't make a difference, because the isser is to do something of a planned creativity. And this is a planned creativity which is similar to the way it was done in the Mishkan, and that's why you're chayiv. We want to welcome in now Jay Siegel, and we want to welcome in, we also got Stephen Holtzman came, so we have, Baruch Hashem, 28 Zoomers here tonight, picking up a little bit, we're still missing Mark Frankel, who I think he's away, but we give a shout out to him and tell him that he's missed, and you know who we need back. We really have to blame Ruvain that he's not really doing enough to get him back. Put you on the hot seat, Ruvain. I was thinking today how much I miss Avigdor Fried. We really got to get Avigdor Fried back. Of course you know him. Tell him Ruvain Shannon is on this year and he wants him back. I mean, Ruvain Shannon says he's putting his foot down. Or else, yeah. But anyway, okay. So now new Mishnah here. And by the way, tonight is I can't believe I'm ready, but with special siyata d'shmaya, there is another chap tonight. It's really amazing. We start truma. So says the Mishnah, if somebody sends out a fire, and it consumed eitzim, wood, or rocks, that means it scorches your landscaping rocks and blackens them, tarnishes them, or scorches your plowed land, chayim. Shenema if fire goes out and finds thorns, v'nechel gadish, and eats stacked up tfua, or yakama, or standing grain, or yasada, or the field, shalim yishalim, he should surely pay hamaver es ha'be'era, marshal who lit the fire. And by the way, in most of the Yiddish taiches, you'll see on the bottom, when it says hamaver es ha'be'era, it says marshal. And if you didn't know what it meant Marshall Castle. Look at him, he's ready with his fire. Okay.
Got all the props ready for the shear.
Marshall, put it a little bit under your nose and it'll help you. That's it. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now.
You know that song too.
Says the Gemara, why do we need, the pasuk says 4 things, kaitzim, gadish, kama, and sada. Why do we need all 4 things to be mentioned? So Amar Rav, Alamali, the kasarachman, the kaitzim, thorns, gadish, stacked, kama, live grain, visada, and field, tzriche. The kasarachman, the kaitzim, because if the Torah wrote thorns, have I mean a kaitzim, the chayiv rachman, thorns you're chayiv, first of all, Mishum d'shchich eish kabayu. It's normal for fire to be by thorns because people do burn thorns, and b'shchicha de pasha, and it's very common that a person will be negligent and not careful because the thorns are not valuable. Aval gadish, but piles of wheat, it's not common fire by them, and it's not normal that a person is negligent, so therefore I might think that he wasn't negligent, rather it was more of an accident, aim alike. Because Rachmana Gadish Havamina Gadish Chayiv Rachmana, the Torah says you're chayiv for the stacks of wheat, Mishum the Epsid Maruba, because it's a big loss, so the Torah was mechayiv him. Aval Kaitzim, but thorns, the Epsid Mu'at, it's not such a big loss, and it's not really direct damage, aim alike. Kamalamali, why does it say standing grain? That's coming to tell you that Taman Be'esh is potter. Remember, we learned that if something is hidden, like if you had a wallet in the stack of grain, Marshall is not chayav for the wallet, because you're not chayav for Taman. And we learned that out from Kama. Ma Kama Begully, just like the standing grain is exposed, Af Kol Begully. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda contributed in Mechayev Aniskei Taman, that you're Mechayev for something even though it's hidden, Be'esh, you're Mechayev for a fire, Kama Lamali, what does he do with Kama? L'rabbis Kol Balei Kaima, that you shouldn't think that you're only Chayev for standing grain, which can't run away, but an animal which could run away, maybe you're not chayiv for. Kamash Blan, anything that's standing like an animal, you're chayiv. V'rabbanan, that learn out from Kama Taman, l'rabbas kol balei Kama minolu. How do you know that you're chayiv for an animal? Nafkalu me oya Kama, from the extra oy. Rabbi Yehuda oy mebaylei l'chalik, that you shouldn't think that you're chayiv only if you have all these things together. Gadish, Kama, Sada, Kaitzim. So it says I to tell you the chai for either or. Rabbanon l'chalik minalu, and how do Rabbanon know that? Nafkalu me oy hasada, because it says oy by sada. Rabbi Yehuda says we don't have two extra oy's. I need the kasser rachman oy hakama. Once it's put in one comma, kasser oy hasada, so it's not extra. Sada lamali. Why does it say sada? To include even something that you might think that you're not chayav for, if it scorches a person's plowed land, or it tarnishes his rocks. Says the Gemara, "V'lichtav Rachmana Sada," let it just say Sada, v'loy boy hanach. So the Gemara says Sricha, Dikas Rachmana Sada, havamina masha b'Sada in, only that which is in the field, like grain, midei achrina loy, but not the scorching the ground, that you wouldn't be chayiv for. Kamashman, that's why it has to say also Gadish and the other stuff. Amr Rab Shimon bar Nachmani, Amr Rab Yonasin, Ein per anas bala olam. Punishment only comes to the world. It's interesting, there was a huge magnitude earthquake in Japan today, and that's always an example of piranhas coming to the world. Not that we have to have any other examples with all the terrible things that are happening in the Middle East, but there was a huge earthquake in Japan with tsunami type results. Punishment only comes to the world when there are wicked people in the world. And when there are punishment, and it starts from the righteous first. Now, there could be two reasons why it starts from the righteous first. Either that the righteous person is taken away so he shouldn't see all of the terrible time. Many tzaddikim passed away right before the terrors of the Holocaust. Many tzaddikim, like for example, the Chakal Yitzchak passed away before. The Chafetz Chaim passed away before. They passed away before the Holocaust. Another reason is that sometimes a tzaddik happens first in order to mitigate the punishment to the world, because a tzaddik is mechaper al adar. A good example of that is that Daniel Hasach was the only person that died in the story of the Megillah, and he saved the day that there should be no real terrible tragedy for Klal Yisrael. But anyway, Shenemar, listen to this homiletic drasha. Ki tzeitzei eish, a fire goes out, umotza kaitzim, and it finds thorns. A fire is a conflagration of suffering. A mosei eish yotza, where is the fire of suffering and tragedy? When does it go out? Bisman shekaitzim mitzuyin la, when there are thorns, when there are worthless people, when there are wicked people. But it starts from the righteous, the worthy, Shnema v'nechal Gadish, and it was eaten Gadish. But Achal Gadish, it doesn't say, and then the Gadish will be eaten after the thorns. Nemar, Ela v'nechal Gadish, that they were already eaten. The tzaddik is eaten first. Shenechal Gadish kfar. Now, you know, there's some people that like the Agadita sections of the Gemara, and there's some people that, go for the beef, like Marshall. He wants the hard Gemaras with Ruvain's mother-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, son-in-laws, wife, sisters, brothers, child, Other people, like Yitzi, is very happy to hear a good piece of Agadita, So says the Gemara, Tani Rabbi Yosef, my dichsiv, what is that which is written? Va'atem loitzeitzu ish mepesach beisai ad boiker. It says in Mitzrayim that the Yidden were told that they shouldn't venture out on the night of Makas B'chayris. They should stay inside. Va'atem loitzeitzu ish mepesach beisai ad boiker. Now why? Kaven shenita reshus l'mashchis, when the destroyer is given permission. Now you'll say, what destroyer? It says ani v'loi malach, ani v'loi sarif. Right? Ani v'loi shaliach. It was only Hashem. The answer is Hashem killed the firstborns. But it also says ve'ein bayis asher ein sham meis. There was no house that didn't have a dead person. So if there was no firstborn, the gadol shebebayis died. That was done by the mashchis, by the destroyer. So Kevin Shenitim Rishus Mashchis ain't a mafkin beit tzadikim l'risham. It doesn't make a distinction between the righteous and the wicked. That's called andrulamusya ba'alaylam. Andrulamusya ba'alaylam be'ein a mafkin beit toiv l'ra. Rashi says that also by the Mabel. V'loy oida, not only that, ala shemaschil min tzadikim tchila. It starts from the righteous first. Shenemar Vichrati mimchot tzaddik v'rasha, and it mentions the tzaddik first. Bachi Rav Yosef cried, Kulei hai nami, so much la'ayin diamond, yet we're compared to nothing. We work so hard, we have so much schusim, and yet, look what happens, that we get punished first. Amalei Abayas, so Abayas says, no, they miss out on all the tragedies. They didn't languish in the ghettos. They didn't have to be in the barracks of Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz and Dachau. Amalei Abayas, Tevusu legabayu, it's good for them, Dichsiv kibimnei hara, before the evilness of HaTzadik. The Tzadik is swept away. I'm going to review the Rav. A person should enter the city while it's still light. Toiv means light, like it says, or ki toiv. So a person should enter when it's light, and he should leave in the morning only when it's light outside. You shouldn't leave the house until the morning. In other words, the Yetzias Mitzrayim happened only in the morning when it was light outside. Tan Rabbanan. And when we learn these Gemaras, it brings us back to 3 years ago, to the terrible time of COVID, where people, mamish, were afraid to venture outside. I know that. If I didn't have to leave the house, I didn't leave the house. Didn't venture outside. Tan Rabbanan dever be'ir, if there's a plague in the city, and remember we defined elsewhere that a plague is if 3 consecutive days, 3 people died in 3 consecutive days, it's a plague. And you could be certain that during COVID, there was more than 3 people on 3 consecutive days. Those that remember, in front of Maimonides, they had a mobile morgue because there was no room in the morgue. They had a morgue, a trailer outside a morgue. And I remember that I had knew somebody who passed away on Friday, and they couldn't bury her before Shabbos because the cemetery was too busy. They couldn't open the grave. They just couldn't handle it. They had so many burials. So there was a time of plague. So bring your feet inward. No, it's stay indoors. In Mitzrayim, they were told on this night the mashchus is around. Don't leave the house. And it also says, Lecha mi, go my people, Bava Kama Daf, go inside your chamber. Uskard la'asecha ba'adecha, and close the door behind you. And it says, Mechutz t'shakel cherev, outside the sword is holding sway. Umechadorim ema, and inside this fear, even inside this fear. So the Gemara says, my v'aimer, why do we need 3 psukim? Where do you have to go inside and you shouldn't venture outside? That's only in the night. But in the day it's okay. Even in the day, go into your chamber. That's only if it's not also scary inside. It might be better to stay outside. When you have companionship, it's better. Outside the sword holds sway. Even though inside is fear, still it's more dangerous outside. The sword of the Malach HaMoves is holding sway. Rav be'iden rischa, Rav at a time of anger, when people were dying, have a sacher kave, he would make sure to close the windows. De'chsiv ki olam maves b'chaloinenu, death comes through the windows. Tan Rabbanan, as we welcome in Dr. Black. Tan Rabbanan. Welcome, Dr. Black. It's good to have you, as we are holding on Daf Samach and Beis, about 15 lines from the top. Remember that after the Daf, we go straight to a Chok Truma Day 1. Very fascinating Chok. I did the Mishnah Yomis already. Also, you can check out on anytime.com Kolosh and YouTube. I put a small talk, it's only 5 minutes, about the difference between our New Year's resolutions and the Goyim's New Year's resolutions. There's also because it was New Year's, so I put on YouTube a share that I gave in 2015 in Jamaica Estates, Queens, where I spoke about Kabbalahs to make at the beginning of the new year. Of course, I meant over there Rosh Hashanah, but I put it on now too, because anytime you want to correct yourself, it's a good thing. Tan Rabbanan, Rav Be'ir, if there's a famine in the city, go to a place where they have food. Remember, in those days, they didn't have shipping. They didn't have trucking. So, when there's no food, get out of Dodge. Tan Rabbanan, Rav Be'ir, if there's a famine in the city, Pazer Raglecha, scatter your feet. Shenemar, that's what Avram did. Vayiv Rav Baritz, there was a famine in the land. Vayever Avram Mitzrayma. Avram went down to Egypt, Logersham. In Egypt, there was never a problem of lack of rain. It was called the bread basket of the region because it was irrigated by the Nile, so it didn't need rain. Va'aymer im amarnu navoi ha'ir. Here, what happened was there were 3 gentlemen who said, if we go back into our city, we'll die in famine. Therefore, let us throw ourselves upon the mercy of Aram. If they'll give us food, good. If not, then we'll die. They'll kill us. So, if we would go back to our own city, we'll die there. Now, my volume, but what's the second pasuk? You should go somewhere else where there's no chance that they'll kill you. But if there's a chance that the enemy will kill you, you shouldn't go there. Let us go and throw ourselves on the camp of Aram. If they will let us live, good. If they'll kill us, we'll die. But don't go back to the city because there will surely die. Tan Rabbanan. Dever Be'ir, if there's a plague in the city, Al Yahalach Adam Be'emtza Derech. You shouldn't travel in the middle of the road. Because when there's a plague, when there's pestilence, the Malach HaMavis struts in the middle of the road. The cave in the Avle Rishusa, since permission was given to him to take away people, he walks outright in the middle. Shalom Be'er, if there's peace in the city, then don't walk on the sides. Don't skulk on the sides. Al Yalach B'tzidei Drachim, the cave in the less slave Rishusa, because since the Malach HaMavis doesn't have permission, Mechabe Chabuya, he hides, Miskei, and he walks on the side of the road. Tana Rabbanan, Dever Be'ir, if there's a pestilence in the city, Al Yikanis Adam Yochid L'Beis HaKnesses. A person shouldn't go in alone to shul. Why? Shemalach HaMavis Mafkid Sham Kela. If there's a Dever in the city, then a person shouldn't go in alone into the synagogue because the Malach HaMavis uses it as his armory. But that's only a shul that doesn't have children learning in it. It doesn't have a yeshiva. It doesn't have a minyan because Hashem is angry that there's no education for the children and there's no minyan. But if the shul is being used, then it's not used by the Malach Mavis and it's safe. Tan Rabbanan, Kalavim Boichim. If dogs are howling, they're whining, Malach HaMavis Balair, that's a sign that the Malach HaMavis has come to the city. Klavim Mesachikim, if the dogs are acting very merry, Eliyahu Navi Balair, that's a sign that Eliyahu is around. But that's only a sign that Eliyahu is around if the female dog isn't there. Because if the female dog is over there, then the dog is not howling about, is not merry about Eliyahu, he's merry about the female. He's dogging around. Marshall didn't have a prop for that one.
Roof.
Now, not bad, Marshall.
I've been working at it.
Yeah, he thinks on his paws. Now, Yosef Rav Ami v'Rav Asi Kamei Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Now, this is the famous Rav Ami and Rav Asi. One had a liking for Agarita, and one had a liking, like Marshall, for Shvere Sugyas, Tam Ke'iker, Tak V'Kayim, right? So, you see that Marshall is wearing a shirt that says 54 on it, because that's Daf Nun Daled, a Shvere Sugya. I know why it says 54. So the Gemara says, Yosef Rab Ami Rab Asi Kamed Rab Yitzchak Nafcha. Rab Ami Rab Asi is sitting before Rab Yitzchak Nafcha. Mar Amalei, one of them said, the Gemara doesn't tell us which one. Mar Amalei Lema Mar Shmaitza. Tell me a Shvere Sugya. Or Mar Amalei Lema Mar Agarita. Tell me a good piece of Agarita. So Pasuk L'Meimer Agarita, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha started to say an Agarita. V'loi Shavik Ma, the other one didn't allow him to say the Agarita. Pasuk L'Meimer Shmaitz, he started to say a Shvera Pilpul. V'loi Shavik Ma, the other one didn't allow him to say the Pilpul. Amalahem, he said to them, you know what what the two of you are like? A man had two wives. Achas Yolda v'achas Akena. One was young, one was old. The Yalda, the young one, Malaketes loy levenis, pulled out his gray hairs, his white hairs, so he should look young. Zakena, the older one, Malaketes loy shchars, pulled out the black hairs, that he should look, mature. Nimsa kach mekan. Turned out to be a baldy. You're stopping me. Each one of you is stopping me and not letting me teach you any Torah. Amalahen. So he said to them, you know what? I'm going to teach you something that has both. This is probably what both of them wanted in the first place. And he said, I'm going to satisfy both of you. Amalahen, ihachi eimelachum milsa. I'm going to tell you something, the shavula travaich, that's going to be satisfactory for both of you. It says in the pasuk, Kiseitze eish, a fire goes out, matzah kaitzim. So that pasuk of Kiseitze eish, matzah kaitzim implies that the fire escaped by itself. It wasn't set by the owner. And then at the end of the pasuk it says Shalom Yishalom Amavir Es HaBe'era. He should pay the one who set the blaze. That sounds like he ignited his fellow's crops. So the Gemara says, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Olai l'shalem es habe'era she'varti. I have to make good for the blaze that I ignited. Now, the truth of the matter is, what happened over here is the fire, the Marsha explains, the fire is the Yetzer Hara. Now, Hashem gave us the Yetzer Hara because without it, we wouldn't have children. We wouldn't continue the race. People wouldn't do anything. What are they going to have children and have to pay for tuition and everything? People wouldn't do it if there wasn't the Yetzer Hara to mate with their wives. So I created the Yetzer Hara, but you took it way beyond. So Kitzeitzei Eish, it happened. It happened with you didn't do it. I created it, but afterwards, Hamaver Es HaBe'era, humans took the Yetzer Hara and they used it for other purposes. They not only mated with their wives, but they looked at things that they weren't supposed to look at, and they listened to things they weren't supposed to listen to, and they did all kinds of things. And yet the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I take responsibility since I put the fire there in the first place. So Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Alayla Shalem Es HaBe'era She'varti. I have to pay for the blaze that I caused. Ani Hitzeisi Eish B'Tzion, because of sin of the Yetzer Hara, I made a fire in Tzion. Shneimar Vayotzes Eish B'Tzion. A fire was ignited in Tzion. Vatoichel Yisodei Seha, and ate the foundations of the temple. Vani osid levnois beish. I will rebuild it with fire. Shenema vani eyel. I will be for it chaymes eish saviv, a wall of fire round about. Ulekovet, and for its glory eya b'seicha. Mirtz Hashem, we should be zeicha to see this b'mherav yameinu. Shmaitza, and in this pasuk we learn out also a halacha. Pasuk HaKosa B'Niskei Mammon. The Torah says that the fire was started by itself, Kitzeitzei Eish, so he's only chayav because it was in his property. V'sayim B'Niskei Gufay. It says Shalom Yishalom Hamaver Es HaBe'era. It's as if he ignited the blaze. To tell you that your fire chayav as if it was your arrow, even though you didn't light it on your friend's crops. It's as if it's your arrow. It's as if it was Hamaver Es HaBe'era. It's as if you lit it. Now, here we have a story. David HaMelech said that he has a desire for the water of Beis Lechem. Now, he grew up in Beis Lechem, so he liked the sweet waters of Beis Lechem. And 3 men risked their lives and broke into the Philistine camp to bring him water. So the Gemara homiletically interprets this to mean that David HaMelech wanted water of Torah, and he sent them to the gate, that's Sanhedrin, in order to ask a shaila. And the Gemara is going to tell us what the shaila is, which relates to our sugya. Let's see it inside. Vayisave David had a desire. Vayomer mi yashkeni mayim mi bar Beis Lechem. Who is going to give me water from the well of Beis Lechem, Asher B'shar, which is by the gate. Vayiboku shloishes hagiborim mamachna plishtim, and 3 warriors broke into the camp of the Philistines. Vayishavu mayim mi bar Beis Lechem, and they drew water from the well of Beis Lechem, Asher B'shar, which was by the gate, and they brought it to David. Now, what? So we understand that David HaMelech wanted water, a mayim al from the shar. He had a shaila for the Sanhedrin. What was the shaila? Amar Rav Nachman Tamun be'esh kamabayilei. He wanted to know if Marshall burned down Ruvain's crops, and Ruvain had his wallet inside the crops. Is Marshall chayiv for the wallet? Do we hold Taman is potter like the Rabbanan, or Taman is chayiv like Reb Yehuda? Ikar Reb Yehuda, Ikar Rabbanan, and we don't know what they answered. The poshtulei, my poshtulei, and they resolved it. Whatever the resolution was, we don't know what the resolution was. Rav Huna Amar. There's another pasuk. This is blended with another story over there, that there were stacks of barley and there were stacks of lentils. So the Gemara says the shaila that David HaMelech had is as follows. Rav Huna Amar Gedishim D'Sa'orim D'Yisrael Hava. There were stacks of barley belonging to Marshall. Yeah, Marshall's an old guy. Stacks of barley belonging to Marshall. That Philistines were hiding. Could only happen. Rich can't believe this. Could only happen to Marshall. There were stacks that Marshall had. It said castle all over it, and there were Philistines hiding inside the stacks. And David wanted to know if he's allowed to burn down Marshall's stacks in order to rid the world of these terrorists. They sent him normally, if there's another way, you can't burn down Marshall's stacks. But that's only a commoner. But you're the king, and you have the special royal rights to plow into anything that's in your way. And the king could blast through anything to make a way, and therefore you don't have to worry a whit about Marshall. Now, nobody stops it. Rabbanan v'isei merabba b'mari amru, Gedishin D'Sa'orim D'Yisrael Hava. What happened is they were hungry. Now Marshall had stacks of barley. They wanted to take it without his permission, to give it to their animals, and there were also stacks of lentils belonging to the Philistines. They would confiscate that and return that to Marshall instead. The Gedishin Da'adoshim D'Plishtim become a bailu, and his question was, Ma'u litov Gedishin shel Sa'orim D'Yisrael. Can we take Marshall's stuff for our animals? Litein lefnei behemtoi. Al manasel shalom Gedishim shel Adoshim D'Plishtim. We're going to capture the lentils and we'll replace it. In other words, it was a fair trade. The money worked out. Sholchalei Chavol Yoshev Rasha. If the wicked takes the collateral, Gezela Yeshalim, and he pays with theft. So the Gemara says, Afal Pisha Gezela Mishalim, even though he's going to reimburse that which he stole, you're called a Rasha. You can't take it and then make it up later without permission. Rasha, but that doesn't apply to you, David, because you're king. You could take whatever you need, and nobody could stop you. So Bishloim Elamandi Amalach Lufe, that he wanted to make this switcheroo. That's why the pasuk tells us of two stacks: a stack of barley and a stack of lentils. There's one pasuk that says there were lentils, and there was one stack of barley. And the question was, could you make the switcheroo? To burn the plishtim inside it, why do you need two stacks? So the Gemara says, well, there were plishtim inside Marshall's stacks of barley, and there were plishtim inside Marshall's stacks of lentil. There were stacks of lentils that also had Philistines hiding in it. So the Gemara says, it's good according to the Mandiyam that says that he wanted to burn it. They stood at the plot and they saved it. Meaning that they said that the halacha is that you're not allowed to burn it. Of course, except because of the royal right. But in general, the halacha is that you're not allowed to save yourself if there's another way with somebody's property. What does it mean he saved it? Well, the answer is they didn't allow them to make the switch. In other words, they didn't allow them to give the barley to the animals and give the marshal later the lentils. Bishloi mahani tarte, these two pshatim, hainu d'chsiv trei kroi. That's why you have two psukim. Ella, says the Gemara, as we turn to Daf Sabach Aleph, but according to Mandiyama, that the question that he wanted the water from Beis Lechem, the Shaila from the Bezdin, the Sanhedrin, was to know what's the halacha of Tamim Be'esh, Ma'i Bailei Kroi, what's this pasuk about the lentils and the barley? Amalach, he says both were a Shaila. The water by Beis Lechem, which signified that he asked Emayim al-Torah by the Shara question from Sanhedrin, that was about Tamim Be'esh. And he had another shaila about whether either you're allowed to burn down Marshall's crops in order to kill the plishtim, or whether you're allowed to take it first for the animals and then return him later the lentils. It was a second shaila as well. Okay, Rabbi said we'll stop over here. Very interesting piece of Gemara. We are now going to learn the chak